Before you even think about whether she's coming back, you have to ask yourself a harder question: where did you go? Because somewhere along the way, between the overthinking, the waiting, the checking of your phone, you stopped being the man she once felt drawn to. Not because you weren't good enough, but because you abandoned yourself in the process of holding on. And this is the truth most people don't want to hear. No one comes back to a place where you no longer stand with strength. When the relationship ended or started slipping, your focus shifted outward. You began measuring your worth by her responses, her silence, her mood, her decisions. Your days became reactive instead of intentional. And without realizing it, you placed her at the center of your life while pushing yourself to the edges. That's not love, that's self-erasure. And self-erasure is the fastest way to lose attraction, respect, and emotional gravity. Here's what you must understand: she didn't fall for the version of you that waits. She didn't fall for the version of you that explains, pleads, or proves. She fell for the version of you that had direction, boundaries, and a life that moved forward with or without her approval. When you lose that version of yourself, she feels it, even if she can't explain it logically. Energy doesn't lie. So before you hope she misses you, you need to become someone worth missing again, not in a performative way, not to impress, but in a deeply personal way that reconnects you to your own identity. That means rebuilding discipline when motivation is gone. That means choosing routines over rumination. It means waking up with purpose instead of questions. This is where your power begins to return. Coming back to yourself doesn't mean becoming cold or heartless. It means becoming grounded. It means no longer negotiating your worth in exchange for temporary reassurance. When you stop chasing clarity from her and start creating clarity within yourself, something shifts. You stop leaking desperation. You stop sending mixed emotional signals. You become stable, and stability is magnetic. Most people give up right at this stage because rebuilding yourself feels lonely at first. There's no applause, no immediate reward, no message from her confirming you're on the right path. But this is the stage where real transformation happens. This is where you detach from the outcome and reattach to your standards. And ironically, this is the moment when she begins to feel your absence, not because you disappeared, but because you stopped being available in the same way. When you return to your mission, your goals, your health, your growth, you stop needing her to validate you. And the moment you no longer need her, you interact differently, with confidence, with calm, with self-respect. Whether she reaches out or not, you are no longer stuck in emotional limbo. You are moving forward. And if she does come back, she won't be returning to the broken version of you who was waiting in hope. She'll be meeting the version of you who learned to stand alone, and that changes everything. Because before she comes back to you, you must come back to yourself. Many people believe that if they just disappear long enough, if they stay silent and pull away, that somehow time alone will do the work for them. But absence without growth is empty space. It creates relief, not desire. And this is where so many get it wrong. They think distance is a strategy, when in reality, distance is only effective when it's backed by visible, undeniable change. If she steps away and all she finds when she looks back is the same version of you, same habits, same emotional reactions, same lack of direction, then her mind fills in the blanks quickly. She doesn't wonder. She doesn't miss. She assumes. And assumptions kill curiosity. Silence only becomes powerful when it makes her question who you're becoming, not confirm who you were. Real absence isn't about vanishing to make her panic. It's about removing your old energy from her life. It's about breaking the emotional pattern she became used to. When you stop reacting the same way, stop explaining yourself, stop seeking reassurance, something inside her system destabilizes. Not because you're manipulating her, but because the familiar dynamic is gone. Growth is what creates that disruption. Growth in your mindset, your emotional control, your priorities, your standards. When you start choosing progress over comfort, your entire presence shifts. You speak differently. You respond differently. You move differently. And even if she doesn't see you every day, she feels the difference the moment you interact again. This is why fake silence never works. You can't just disappear physically while staying the same mentally. If your thoughts are still stuck on her, if your self-worth still depends on her return, that energy leaks through everything you do. When you finally reappear, she senses it instantly. There's no mystery there, only familiarity. And familiarity without growth feels safe, not exciting. But when silence is paired with real evolution, it creates uncertainty in the best way. She starts wondering what changed. She starts comparing the old you to the new you. She starts questioning whether she underestimated your strength. And that internal dialogue is far more powerful than any message you could send. Growth also protects you. Because while you're improving, you're no longer frozen in hope. You're building a life that doesn't revolve around whether she comes back. You're becoming emotionally independent. And independence is attractive because it signals confidence, not need. If she does reach out during this phase, your response matters. Not what you say, but how you say it. Calm, unrushed, grounded. No emotional spikes. That's when she realizes the silence wasn't punishment, it was transformation. That you didn't step away to make her chase, you stepped away to become better. And here's the most important part: if she never comes back, the growth still pays off. You didn't waste time waiting. You invested it in yourself. You upgraded your life, your standards, your future. That's the difference between losing someone and losing yourself. Absence only works when it's backed by growth, because growth is what turns distance into power. When she goes quiet, the mind immediately jumps to the worst conclusions. You assume it's over. You assume she's moved on. You assume you've been replaced. And because of those assumptions, most people panic and sabotage any remaining chance by reacting emotionally instead of responding with strength. But silence is not always rejection. More often, it's processing. And understanding this difference changes everything. Human emotions don't shut off instantly. When someone steps back, it's rarely because they feel nothing. It's usually because they feel too much: confusion, doubt, relief mixed with loss, freedom mixed with emptiness. Silence is the space where those emotions collide. She's not pulling away because she's certain, she's pulling away because she's uncertain. And uncertainty is not your enemy. What destroys potential reconnection is not her silence, but your interpretation of it. When you treat silence as a verdict, you react from fear. You send long messages. You ask for closure. You try to explain, defend, remind, convince. And every one of those actions communicates the same thing: pressure. Pressure doesn't bring clarity, it forces distance. Silence, on the other hand, allows comparison. When you're no longer constantly present, her mind begins to contrast life with you versus life without you. This is where memory becomes selective. She doesn't replay every argument. She replays how you made her feel at her best. This doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen if you interrupt the process. Processing requires time and emotional safety. When she feels chased, her mind stays in defense mode. When she feels space, her mind opens. That's when questions arise. That's when curiosity replaces resistance. That's when regret has room to grow. This is also why staying grounded during silence is critical. Your calm becomes a mirror. If you remain composed, focused, and self-directed, her internal narrative shifts. She expected you to crumble. She expected desperation. When that doesn't happen, it disrupts her certainty. And disruption leads to reflection. Silence is where she checks her decision against reality. She watches your absence. She notices whether you respected the space or violated it. She observes whether your life collapsed or continued. And without you saying a word, you're communicating strength or weakness. But this stage is uncomfortable, and that's why most people fail here. The ego wants immediate answers. The heart wants reassurance. But growth requires restraint. This is where emotional maturity separates outcomes. By not forcing resolution, you allow natural resolution to unfold. There's another truth most don't consider: silence also reveals your value to yourself. When you don't rush to fill the void, you reclaim your self-respect. You stop auditioning for approval. You start validating yourself. And that inner shift changes how you show up forever. If she reaches out during this phase, it's often subtle: a neutral message, a question, a memory. This is not the moment to unload emotion. It's the moment to remain centered. because she's not testing your feelings, she's testing your stability. Silence is not the end. It's the bridge between who you were together and who you both might become separately or again. Let the silence do its work. The hardest thing to do when you want someone back is to stop wanting the outcome so badly. Because the desire for control disguises itself as hope. You tell yourself you're being patient, that you're being loyal, that you're just waiting for the right moment. But underneath that waiting is fear, the fear that if you let go, you lose your chance forever, and that fear is exactly what keeps you stuck. Letting go of the outcome doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop negotiating your peace for a possibility. When your happiness depends on whether she returns, you give away your power. Every thought becomes conditional. Every decision becomes delayed. You pause your life in anticipation, and life doesn't wait for anyone. The paradox is this: the moment you release the need for her to come back, you regain emotional control. You stop monitoring her actions. You stop reading between the lines. You stop building stories in your head. And in that mental quiet, something important happens. You become present again. Presence is confidence. Presence is strength. When you're attached to the outcome, your energy is tense. Even if you say the right things, your need shows. It shows in your tone, in your timing, in your reactions. But when you detach, your energy softens. You're no longer trying to pull something toward you. You're allowing life to unfold. And that shift is felt immediately by the other person. Letting go also forces honesty. You're no longer pretending you're okay while secretly waiting. You admit the truth to yourself. You don't know what will happen, and that's okay. That acceptance frees you, because control was never real to begin with. All you ever had was influence, and influence only works when it's not forced. This is where most people misunderstand detachment. They think it means indifference. It doesn't. It means emotional maturity. It means trusting yourself enough to handle any outcome. When you know you'll be okay whether she comes back or not, you stop chasing certainty. And certainty is not what brings people back, strength is. As you let go, your behavior changes naturally. You stop over-explaining. You stop proving your worth. You stop holding space for someone who isn't holding space for you. And in doing so, you send a clear message not to her, but to yourself that your life matters. Ironically, this is often the moment she begins to feel the shift, not because you announced it, not because you demanded anything, but because the emotional dynamic changed. You're no longer leaning forward, you're standing upright, and that balance is noticeable. Detachment also protects you from settling. If she does return, you're no longer willing to accept the bare minimum just to keep her. You're able to assess whether her return aligns with your growth. You choose from clarity, not fear. And if she doesn't return, you haven't lost anything. You've gained yourself back. You've built resilience. You've learned to sit with uncertainty without collapsing. That skill changes every future relationship you'll ever have. Letting go of the outcome is not giving up, it's taking your power back. If she comes back, it cannot be to the same version of you she walked away from. Because if nothing has changed, the ending will simply repeat itself. Time alone doesn't fix dynamics, growth does. And this is where many people make a critical mistake. They become so focused on getting her back that they forget to ask whether the version of themselves she's returning to is strong enough to hold the relationship differently. A return should never feel like relief. Relief means you were holding your breath, waiting to be chosen again. And when someone comes back to a person who was desperate for the return, the power imbalance remains. The relationship restarts on unstable ground. Real reconnection begins from mutual respect, not emotional rescue. If she returns, it should be because she recognizes something different in you. Not louder confidence, not rehearsed lines, but quiet strength, emotional control, clear boundaries, a sense that you are no longer chasing validation, but living from standards. That version of you doesn't need to convince her of anything. His presence speaks for him. This is why your work during separation matters more than the reunion itself. If you've rebuilt your discipline, your purpose, your emotional stability, you won't rush the moment. You won't flood her with explanations or promises. You'll listen, you'll observe, You'll assess whether her return comes with accountability and clarity, not just nostalgia or loneliness. A stronger version of you understands that love without respect doesn't last. So if she comes back without acknowledging what went wrong, without taking responsibility for her role, without showing consistency, you don't bend yourself to keep her. You stay grounded. You choose alignment over attachment. This doesn't mean you punish her. It means you protect yourself. Growth teaches you that boundaries are not walls, they're filters. They allow the right behavior through and block the rest. And if she's truly ready to return, she'll respect those boundaries instead of resisting them. The strongest position you can be in is not, "I hope this works, but I know who I am now." From that place, you don't fear loss. You don't fear walking away again if needed. And paradoxically, that freedom creates safety. Because someone feels more secure with a person who chooses them than with someone who needs them. If she senses that you've built a life you're proud of, she doesn't feel like she's your only source of happiness. She feels like she's being invited into something stable. That's what makes reconnection feel different this time. And here's the truth most people avoid: sometimes the stronger version of you realizes that her return doesn't fit your future. Growth can change your standards. And that's not failure, that's evolution. You didn't lose her, you outgrew the dynamic that couldn't sustain you. But if she does return to a stronger you, the relationship has a chance to be something new, not a continuation of the past, but a rebuild from a higher level of awareness. If she comes back, it must be to someone who no longer needs her to feel whole. There comes a moment when you realize the real victory was never about whether she comes back. It was about whether you lost yourself waiting. And this final shift in perspective is what separates pain from power. Because the truth is, when you commit fully to your growth, there is no losing outcome, only different forms of winning. When your life no longer revolves around her decision, you reclaim your future. You stop placing your emotional well-being in someone else's hands. You stop waking up with hope or disappointment tied to external events. Instead, you build momentum. You move forward with intention. And forward movement is healing. Whether she returns or not, the work you've done changes you permanently. You've learned discipline where there was once desperation. You've learned emotional regulation where there was once reactivity. You've learned self-respect where there was once compromise. These are not temporary gains. They shape how you show up in every relationship, every challenge, every season of your life. If she comes back, she meets a man who is no longer trying to be chosen. She meets someone who chooses himself first, and from that place chooses her freely, not out of fear. That dynamic is healthy. That dynamic is balanced, and only from that balance can real connection exist. But if she doesn't come back, you still win. Because you didn't stay stuck. You didn't waste months or years waiting for something that wasn't guaranteed. You invested that energy into becoming stronger, clearer, more grounded. And the version of you that emerges from that process attracts different opportunities, new connections, deeper respect, and a life that feels aligned. This is the point where attachment dissolves. Not because you stopped caring, but because you stopped clinging. You understand that love is not about possession. It's about compatibility and choice. And when something is meant for you, it doesn't require you to abandon yourself to keep it. Winning also means you no longer romanticize the past. You see it clearly. You appreciate what it taught you without needing to return to it. And that clarity frees you from repeating cycles that once drained you. Most importantly, you regain trust in yourself. You trust your ability to survive loss. You trust your ability to rebuild. You trust your judgment. And self-trust is the foundation of confidence. At this stage, her decision loses its emotional weight. It becomes information, not identity. And that emotional neutrality is power. Because you are no longer controlled by outcomes, you are guided by values. When you reach this point, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing endings. You stop fearing beginnings. You live from presence instead of anticipation. And that is the ultimate win, no matter what she chooses.